everyone, and welcome back to English with Kayleigh. In today's video, we're going to analyse another one of Ted Hughes' poems. This one is entitled Hawk Roosting. So first of all, we're going to read through the poem together, then we'll do a summary, we'll discuss the themes, and then we'll do our stanza by stanza analysis. So let's read Hawk Roosting. I sit in the top of the wood, my eyes closed. Inaction, no falsifying dream, between my hooked head and hooked feet, or in sleep rehearse perfect kills and eat. The convenience of the high trees, the air's buoyancy and the sun's rays are of advantage to me, and the earth's face upwards for my inspection. My feet are locked upon the rough bark. It took the whole of creation to produce my foot, my each feather. Now I hold creation in my foot. Or fly up and revolve it all slowly. I kill where I please, because it is all mine. There is no sophistry in my body. My manners are tearing off heads, the allotment of death. For the one path of my flight is direct, through the bones of the living. No arguments assert my right. The sun is behind me. Nothing has changed since I began. My eye has permitted no change. I'm going to keep things like this. Okay, so that is Hawk Roosting by Ted Hughes. So let's just go through a summary, make sure we understand what happens in the poem. So we see a hawk tells us how it spends its day planning and dreaming about the perfect killing of prey and eating it. So straight away, a very uplifting and happy poem from Ted Hughes. No, of course, it's quite dark in its nature. The hawk talks of its position high in the trees, where the earth looks up to it as it inspects the world below. And it says that it took many years to create its perfect body, the perfect exterior, and gives this suggestion to the fact that it sees itself as this godlike creature, in that it's top of the food chain, and that it makes the decisions about what lives and what dies. And it feels no remorse for killing, and it feels the way it shows kindness is by ripping off the heads of its prey. And finally, we see that the hawk does not wish for anything to change. It hopes to remain this way forever. And a brilliant poem from Ted Hughes that's written as an internal monologue of the viewpoint of the hawk, and the theme that it really explores is this idea of nature and violence and violence in nature, and how it is. It's necessary and it's part of nature. It's not something that animals need or want to question. Of course, they don't have that capability, but so it juxtaposes with human nature as well, and how we view violence. So it's a very clever, layered poem in what it discusses. Okay, so let's do a stanza by stanza analysis. So stanza 1, I sit in the top of the wood, my eyes closed. So of course, as I said, this is an internal monologue of the hawk. And all the way throughout, it juxtaposes the animal instincts that this hawk has, and how that is juxtaposed with human qualities. So especially when we consider about violence and the act of killing, how different those views are, but then questioning that it is an act of nature for animals. So is it wrong in that sense? So there's a lot of questions that come from this poem. I sit in the top of the wood. Of course, this also alludes to the fact that the hawk is the top of the food chain as well. My eyes closed. Lots of end stop lines throughout this poem, and I think that for the majority they have the same purpose and the same effect. It creates that sense of control. that the hawk moves at its own pace. It shares things at its own pace within the poem. It is top. It is the number one and gets to make those decisions. Inaction, no falsifying dream. So when we consider dreaming, that's a human quality. So again, juxtaposing humans and our thoughts on violence. And as I said, to the hawk, violence is simply a part of its life, not something that is to be contended with or battled with, or to say, this is right, this is wrong, should I do this? It's just a part of who he is and his purpose on the planet. Between my hooked head and hooked feet. So we've got this alliteration, and it really serves to highlight the sharpness, not only of the claws and of the beak, but also their mental sharpness in how they hunt and how they attack their prey. Or in sleep, rehearse perfect kills and eat. So even in its sleep, the hawk inhabits its ultimate true nature, and that's what his purpose is, and that's even what he thinks about when he's asleep. Stanza 2, we move on to how nature really suits its killing instinct, it being the hawk. So how nature suits its killing instinct. So we have this almost celebration of its position. So the convenience of the high trees, that they are once again at the very top of everything, and also a celebration of the trees themselves in the role that they play in allowing the hawk to hide, to stalk its prey. The air's buoyancy and the sun's rays are of advantage to me. So we've got that internal rhyme there, the buoyancy, the ray, and this gives a sense of the harmony of nature, and how the air and the sun, how they work to the hawk's advantage. It shows us that the harmony between them. But of course, that includes the violent acts as well, because those things contribute to the hawk being able to stalk and attack its prey. And of course, we see this enjambment throughout some of the stanzas as well. And we get the sense of the ease of the hawk, of its ability to fly, to hunt, and it has this pervading sense of ease about it. And the stanza finishes, and the earth's face upward for my inspection. We get the sense of the hawk's arrogance here and its entitlement, as it portrays itself as a godlike figure, that things look up to him for inspection, in the hope that they will be good enough or clever enough to evade death. It seems to undermine that kind of the falsifying, going back to that first stanza, the falsified morality of the Christian tradition and beliefs. And the reason that we're talking about the Christianity is in the next stanza we have the mention of creation, but it's capitalized. So that there seems to be some just juxtaposition or questioning of human morality, and also of religion as well. So stanza 3 starts with my feet are locked upon the rough bark. If we think about the connotations of locked, especially locked and loaded, we get this a sense of a threat from the hawk, that it's ready to attack. And once again, another end-stop line. The hawk is poised and unhurried, but unhurried, as with the first two stanzas. So it's always alert and ready, but it takes its time in doing what it wants. It took the whole of creation. So again, that capitalization that I mentioned in the previous stanza alludes to Christianity, but it also allows us to consider scientific evolution as well, in what the hawk says in the next two lines. To produce my foot, my each feather. The hawk sees itself as this kind of pinnacle of creation, that it's perfect. And this is where we start to see that the poem draws a distinction between human morality, which obviously in the West, in Western countries, is largely informed by Christianity, And there it shows that distinction between that Christianity and human morality and nature and its laws. And just going back to this idea of creation, now I hold creation in my foot. Obviously, this is repeated in the stanza, but the meaning changes here. And the creation that it holds in its foot is now the prey captured by the hawk. So again, showing that sense of superiority. And my foot, just going back to the first line of the stanza and that final phrase, we just get the sense, once again, this deadly weapon that is ready to attack. So stanza 4, it starts with enjambment from the previous stanza. So, or my foot, or fly up and revolve it all slowly. So again, we come back to that sense of freedom, that ease of flight. And then we see this kind of slowing consonance of the L sound here. So in those moments of preparing to strike. I kill where I please because it is all mine. Of course, this emphasizes the superiority, and is quite shocking for the reader, because imagine if humans, spoke this kind of way. So we just get the sense again that this is human nature. This is the nature of animals. This is what they do. There is no sophistry in my body. My manners are tearing off heads. So of course, these are human traits. Okay, so sophistry is trying to win an argument through being quite deceptive. And of course, manners are specifically human traits. But it gives the idea, and it highlights the fact that we as humans cannot understand the way of the hawk. And by extension, that animalistic nature that they have. But it says my manners are tearing off heads. And what's interesting to that is, whilst we cannot understand the way of the hawk, doesn't this also apply to humans? Sadly, does violence exist in the human world? Well, yes, of course it does. So it creates a lot of questions for humans and readers as we read. How should we consider our own capacity for violence? And how can people reconcile that with the Christian idea that violence makes a person inherently evil? So if one commits, an act that is considered evil, how do we come back from that? Is there a way back? So there are a lot of questions that are created. And the difference, of course, being is that the hawk doesn't want to question. It only wishes to do what comes naturally. And, the violent acts of killing are just a part of who he is and what he does. So stanza 5 goes to the allotment of death. Now, this is quite clever. There's a clever wordplay here. So it could be talking about how the hawk allots death to its prey. But we also get that, if we think about what an allotment is, it's a small piece of land that people own and work on. So again, just showing the hawk's ownership and his ability to allot death to those around him. Again, another end stop line. This one has a slightly different feel and different meaning. It creates quite a tense feeling here in that stopping just before death and before, you've finally been captured and hunted. For the one path of my flight is direct. So that one is quite important because it gives that singular purpose. That singular purpose is to kill, and it's that one true nature of the animal. Is direct through the bones of the living. So again, that enjambment, but here it shows a directness, this overpowering nature and superiority of the hawk. No arguments assert my right. So once again, it doesn't need to use human logic. It doesn't want to, it doesn't need to justify its role. It is what it is. And then the final stanza we see the permanence of the hawk and how it feels it will forever sit in this position on the food chain and in the world. The sun is behind me. And that's quite a striking image, because that suggests that the hawk exists between the sun and the earth, and again gives that allusion to this idea that it is godlike, and the danger that it poses to other creatures, in that it has this shadow. It's this shadowed creature that is prowling, looking for its victim. My eye has permitted no change. So once again, godlike in surveying and making decisions, and that but actually it does have that power over what lives and what dies. However, it doesn't actually have the power to make the decision that it will live on forever like this. And it ends with this short declarative sentence: I'm going to keep things like this. That end stop line again, which is actually used all the way throughout this stanza. So it really does emphasize the hawk's perceived authority, and its hope and idea of the permanence of the animal. Okay, so let's discuss the form, the meter, and rhyme. So it's made up of 6 stanzas, made up of quatrains, which of course 4 lines. With the number of end stop lines, there is a sense of order and pattern, much like how the hawk views his position in the world. So we do expect quite a regular structure, stanza structure, based on the content of the poem. The meter, it's written in free verse. And of course, the hawk knows, or doesn't want to, it knows no rhyme or reason. And that is reflected in the lack of meter used throughout the poem. It doesn't have these human traits, these human qualities, to be able to do that. And it's written to reflect that. The rhyme, again, no rhyme scheme, which can link back in with what I've just said about meter, but it also gives the sense and creates the sense of this very rough and unpredictable nature of the poem, which is, of course, much like the traits and that attack of the hawk as well. Okay, so I'm going to leave you with an essay question. So this is one you can practice for the exam. You could write down some bullet points in the comments below, and we can have a discussion about it. So the essay question I'm going to leave you with is: comment closely on the ways in which Hughes presents the predatory bird in Hawk Roosting. So be sure to write down some comments so that we can chat and engage there. Hope that this video helped you. Please don't forget to like and subscribe for more Ted Hughes videos and more literature in general. And I'll catch you in the next one. Bye, guys.